As you well know, I am very much into my history. I feel it is so important to understand where we come from and the origins of many of our customs. One area where our history shines through is in our sayings and phrases. Many of us use words every day that stretch back through time and in many cases over hundreds of years. Join me for episode 1 of Idioms. As stated, our language contains a plethora of terms that to any outsider looking in would seem utterly nonsensical. These hangovers have incredibly interesting origins. So let's start with that very word, the hangover. We all know the term hangover. You've gone out with your mates or colleagues after work and you've consumed enough booze to drown a medium-sized goat and subsequently woken up the next morning feeling like you're recovering from an autopsy. But why is it referred to as a hangover? The most logical explanation would be that it hangs over from the night before. But in Victorian Britain, two major events were occurring simultaneously. The country was beginning to advance in technology, which saw those with the know-how prosper, and those who did not have the know-how were struggling to make a living. To those who were not very well off, life was tough. Many people were homeless and unable to afford lodgings. As a result, boarding or doss houses were invented to provide cheap places to stay. Many people during this dark period would drink to relieve the pain and misery of hardship. When it came to sleeping after a night on the pop, the doss houses would offer several options. The 1 penny sit-up, where you would literally sit in a chair to sleep. The 3 penny lay-down, where you'd be given essentially an open coffin next to a bunch of other coffins to sleep in. And the 2 penny hangover, which involved being sat up or stood up with nothing but a rope to stop you from braining yourself on the floor below. After a night of drinking though, many people would be found hanging over the rope, hence the term hangover. Further back now to 1801, Britain is again at war, and Lord Nelson is engaged in the Battle of Copenhagen. During this battle, Lord Nelson was ordered to retreat. However, Nelson believed that he had the upper hand and could turn the war around. So in order to proceed with his plan, he raised his telescope to look for the signals from the commanding ship, but could not see any retreat signals being given. He then sailed into battle and subsequently won. The reason he could not see any retreat signals is because he held the telescope up to his blind eye. Therefore, the term turning a blind eye is now used to refer to someone ignoring the warning signs. Back further again now to the 1600s. It is rumoured that under British law during the 17th century, if a man found his wife to be unfaithful, he could legally beat her with a stick. The only rule that was imposed on this practice, however, is that the stick may be no thicker than the width of his thumb. Hence, the rule of thumb. Now, regarding this one, it is difficult to find supporting evidence for this origin. There are various different origins, including one from the cutting of cloth being no wider than the thickness of your thumb, and in 1685, a Scottish preacher who stated that many believe Christians to worship God as though they were builders operating under a rule of thumb. Having said that, further back in time, wives and husbands were known to settle disputes with violence. In the 1400s, husbands and wives were legally allowed to settle disagreements with a duel. The husband had to be in a hole in the ground, and the wife would be allowed to roam free but had to have a weighted cloth on her. I'm sure it would have made for interesting dinner conversation afterwards. Also from the 1600s, during this period, as is the custom nowadays, people would often go straight to the pub to unwind after work. They would drink their fill and engage in lively conversation. At the time, ales were measured in pints, which we still have today, but also in quarts. A quart is the equivalent of 1.1 litres, which sounds good to me, but enough of that. As is the case with the piss artists of today, some artists may not be able to hold their liquor and begin to get a bit mouthy. When the landlord would see that, he would holler across the room to the rowdy party and to warn them to watch their pints and quarts, or as we now refer to it, mind your P's and Q's. In ancient India, it was customary to throw lumps of butter or ghee at the statue of a god or goddess. It was seen as an offering in order to be granted favour with that particular deity. However, this practice has been adopted by us Brits to explain the kissing of the boss's arse in order to seek better opportunities in the workplace. So the next time you use the term, "let me butter him up," before going into a meeting with your boss by buying him a pint at lunchtime, just remember, it works just as well by slapping him in the face with a palm of butter. And the final one from me. Working in an office, one can tend to hear a lot of bullshit. From nonsense such as drill down from someone who has never held a hand drill, let alone been on a deep sea oil rig, to the utter bollocks of blue sky thinking. I mean, come on. If you use that, I hope you step on an upturned plug in bare feet in the middle of the night. But enough of my annoyances. I'll know if any of my colleagues watch this, as they'll probably emphasize their usage just to crank my gears. One piece of office jargon does have a much darker origin though, and is used much more freely than all others, and that is deadline. We use it to refer to a date or time that a project or piece of work needs to be completed by. In history, however, a deadline was an actual line in the form of a drawn circle or a piece of rope on the ground around a group of prisoners as a cageless cell. If one should step over that border, they were immediately shot by the watching guards. A little more dramatic than getting your sales report in or a quota done. However, it would make for lively viewing if a manager would use this tactic now though. Well, that's all from us here at Dark Entertainment. We hope that you've enjoyed the episode. And if so, please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for all notifications, but make sure you give it a good thumbs up because that really helps the channel. If you wish to get in contact, you can drop a comment below. I aim to answer all comments. You can also find me on X or on Facebook. Or if you've got a story that you would like me to tell, a location that you'd like me to look into, or have a suggestion for the channel, please feel free to email me at dark_entertainment@outlook.com. And remember, stay dark, stay creepy, and always laugh. Ta-ta!